become a part of my life because of my father. He's from England, Dagenham boy, West Ham supporter, which was a bit odd, obviously, with the Millwall connection. But he's a massive, massive football fan. And being English, it's a natural progression within the family. So growing up as a kid, I used to wake up early hours of the morning and see flickerings of the TV. I used to hear the commentator shouting goal or something like that. And I used to creep down the hallway and could always see the Premier League on. They'd phoned a few scouts and they said they've got this young Aussie, eager, ready to trial. And I just needed the opportunity. And when I had the phone call, I'd been training down the park for hours and hours by myself, like literally just kicking a ball, running up and down from 18-yard box to 18-yard box because that was my run. I knew as a midfielder. I had to have a big engine, and I had the call and I ended up going to Millwall. I basically had that trial and I just left everything on the pitch for that 2 weeks, everything. It was just a whole new experience and something that I had to learn very quickly, that on the pitch, that I had to protect the ball and keep things simple and try and get integrated as soon as possible. But I felt the wrath of it very early because going to Millwall, very physical, young Australian kid. Off the pitch, I was very quiet, very reserved, very polite, always trying to do extra. But then on the pitch, I knew that I had to switch character very quickly so I could survive in that environment. Millwall made me. I am what I am today because of what I learned there. I learned my trade. You talk about Keith Stevens, player that I played with. I learned very early on what a tackle was after going to a challenge with him and just training. And I remember my reaction after he caught me to go directly back, and when given the opportunity with the ball is to also let him feel the same sort of character who I am on the pitch. So he knew also what he was dealing with, even though I was 17. He had a massive influence on my career, still someone till this day that I speak to regularly. That we spend a lot of time with. He lives in Australia, but the key was going there to a club that gave me the opportunity. And when you look at the players, Neil Harris and all these sorts of players that we had the best opportunity because the manager needed to play young kids, and we were also enthusiastic and we wanted to do well for the club. And in the end, we had some amazing times, but also just really enjoyed, getting in the changing room, and making sure we left everything on the pitch. It definitely gave us a taste for the big occasion playing at Wembley before they knocked it down. And we played against Wigan. And this was a team of boys, young, enthusiastic, committed, that were fearless. We were fearless. We knew every time that we went onto the pitch together that we could create something, we could make something special happen. Lo and behold, that game, it was probably one step too far, unfortunately, even though we had the chance to win it. That, you look back, it's an amazing memory for us as kids. I look at pictures now and just think, I'm so blessed to have had that opportunity. But it's just one of those things that to have that opportunity so early, it helped me mature. Even though I was still so young, to be able to take that forward and then try and help the club do bigger things and look for bigger things. Promotion's really special, especially at Millwall, especially for the fans, especially for the financial situation the club was in, and also we always had to wheel and deal to sign players. We were always striving to keep our players. It was always just trying to hang on and stay to keep those players, to win promotion, to try and get to the next levels and to continue to do that. And unfortunately, in the past, we've lost players, and including myself. But it's massive to get promoted at that age because it sets your level. It sets the bar of what you want as a player. It helps teach you the ingredients of what it needs within a changing room to be successful. I'll never forget that moment because it definitely helped, form part of who I am today. When we got to the championship, I knew that was my platform. After getting promoted, I knew that the levels were there. I'd waited so long for this opportunity, and I was more than happy to stay in the championship, and I was so excited for that season. And being a season where I got 10 plus goals, then being able to be more of a leader, more of someone that the team and the club could turn to or rely on was the responsibility that I really liked. And I like fighting against the odds of trying to get promoted again, because no one ever thought that we'd ever get close to having an opportunity to get promoted to the Premier League. But deep down inside my mind, I was like, well, why not? And I knew that I was ready, and I knew that I was going to be a goal-scoring midfielder because I had the fitness, I had the drive, but also I had the timing, which is the biggest key to anything. I think it was probably the hardest moment for me as a footballer, dealing with the first ever serious injury. But it was the best moment for me as a player. I realised very quickly who I was as an individual, and I was determined to get back as soon as possible. I basically, have 2 to 3 treatments a day. If they say to ice 3 times, I'll ice 6 times. I try and speed up recovery. I didn't understand the concept of getting treated once or twice a day when there's, effectively 10 hours in a day that you can actually do stuff. I didn't understand the concept of having a day off when you're injured. Like, what's a day off? So being around Mills is a great atmosphere that you had, like a really raw gym off the physio room. And throughout my injuries, even if you're on crutches or in a boot, you could still go do pull-ups and push-ups. You could go on a one-legged bike. What I'm trying to say is that it wasn't a job. It was the best feeling to be there every day, to have a training kit. It wasn't about the contract. It was about a training kit. It was about training twice a day. It was so much more about the journey and what it meant. So the injury was the best thing because I was at my lowest point, but then once I come through it, I knew that what was on the other side, and that was to play again at the Den. Getting someone like Dennis Wise was good for players like myself. It was David Livermore, Stephen Reid, all these sorts of players, young. The reason why I say it's good is because he's won so much. The temperament that he had on the pitch and off the pitch, the club or Chelsea where he played at, and the influence that he had there. But then coming to Millwall, to be with us, to help us grow, to share his experience, it suited him so well. It suited us so well because Ray Wilkins come as well. Dennis was very enthusiastic, very passionate, very emotional, whereas Ray Wilkins was very calm, very soothing, very holistic with his approach. And then when you put that together, it worked, and for me, to be playing beside him and watching and learning and seeing his movements and vision, and also scoring goals, it freed up a lot of space for me, but at the same time, give me the little bit of know-how on the levels of where I needed to get to, of understanding about keeping the ball more. And he was such a great passer, and he was so good for us on and off the park that he had a big influence on a lot of the players at that time. To score at Sunderland at Old Trafford on that stage in that game was probably one of the biggest moments for me as a footballer at that time, because what it meant for the club, what it meant for the team, and we were there because we deserved to be, but then it was about just getting over that last hurdle. And I'll never forget the goal when Paul Eiffel cut in, had a shot, come back off the keeper. I've struck it, just try to keep it on target and keep, nice contact, and it hit the back of the net. And that's why you play football. Who knew if I was going to get that chance ever again as a player in a semi-final to take us to the finals of one of the biggest competitions. But I always looked back to that moment as a defining moment, because teams or players or clubs or fans always look to a player to make something happen, or to have that opportunity to create something special. And when I felt that, I was always trying to replicate it. I was always looking for that opportunity to do more in my career. I remember Ray Wilkins saying to take in this moment and to understand where you are, to the realization of getting there, and to enjoy the experience. And I'll be honest with you, the final had already been played. It was at Sunderland. We knew we were massively up against it. We also knew that the mindset was to try and win. And when you look at the pairings of, who you're playing against and the teams, it was miles away. But at the same time, we had Dennis Wise and Ray Wilkins at the helm, and big characters within the change rooms that were motivating, that were, talking about what we could leave on that pitch, what we could leave for Millwall. And it was very special. It's hard to put into words because everything went so quick. I remember swapping jerseys, I think, with Ruud van Nistelrooy, and looking at players like Roy Keane and thinking to myself, they're winners because of that, because of their application. You look at Ryan Giggs and the Nevilles and Rio Ferdinand and all these sorts of players, and you're just like, one day you're going to be there. You don't know what path you're going to take and how you're going to get there. But I just thought to myself, eventually I'll be playing against you guys more regularly.